How the AI sets up the opposition is probably one of the most mysterious things in FM, but it is crucial to understand how it does it. And so today I'm going to take a look at how I think the AI sets up the opposition and how you can use that to your advantage if you spend a little time researching. And we've also got a setup for this big game against Tottenham. Let's go and kick some balls. Hello and welcome back to a season with Aston Villa, the season in which we are playing very slowly. We are using the data hub and the chalkboard to gain knowledge of how we are playing ourselves and how the opposition are playing, and how we can use that knowledge and that data to maximize our chances of success in each and every game. And today we're going to focus on this very big game against Tottenham. And as you can see, it is first versus second. We're only separated by goal difference. We are both unbeaten and we are both in very good form. So this is a very, very big test for this Aston Villa team. But first, I just want to take a quick run through on how I think the AI sets up the opposition and how this might have a very big effect on how the game goes. And this is one of the most interesting parts of the game. How does the game set up the tactics for the opposition? Well, the first thing to think about is familiarity. Familiarity with a tactic will play a big part in the results that you get on the pitch. It will also play a big part in how the opposition perform. And tactical familiarity will be to do with a lot of things. For example, teams who don't make a lot of transfer activity in the transfer window or bring in players from teams who play in a similar way to you will probably have a very good start to the season. Teams who make a lot of transfers in the transfer window and change the team and play them even though they've arrived late will probably struggle at the beginning of the season, and as the team becomes more familiar, your results will start to get better. Let's take a look at a couple of examples from this season. Ipswich, for example, are flying high. They were a promoted team, not expected to do very well, but they are doing extremely well at the moment and they are on a very good unbeaten run. If we take a look at their transfer history, then you can see that really in terms of their first team, they've made very few transfers in, and that means that they are playing in a familiar way. And so Ipswich are probably doing very well because they have limited their transfer activity, just strengthening in particular areas, and that means that everybody starts the season very familiar with the tactical approach that the manager has set up. Whereas other teams, possibly like Liverpool, who've been busy in the transfer window, have had a fairly poor, quiet start to the season. But that does not mean that that's going to be like that for the rest of the season. As their team becomes more familiar with the tactical approach, then they are going to improve. Their players are very good players, and that means that eventually they will become more and more familiar with the way the manager wants to play, and their results will improve. Aston Villa, I took over and only used really real-world transfers, so I have not really interfered much with the way that they play. So I'm guessing that a lot of the results that we've had, also given the fact that we had a favourable start to the season in terms of the fixture list, is due to tactical familiarity. However, we need to be careful because I have set Aston Villa up in several different styles. We have the 4-2-3-1 we began the season with, and they're beginning to get very familiar with that. The 4-3-3 they are not quite so familiar with. And so if it's a big game, I probably would be best going back to the tactic that they are most familiar with. However, as we'll see later, I don't think this seems to fit what we want to do today. So I probably will start with something that they're not quite so familiar with, but will probably give us a little bit more defensive stability in terms of how Tottenham play. And so the next thing to consider is, how does the AI set up the tactic? Well, basically in the same way as you do, because we tick all these boxes and we decide whether we're going to be balanced or positive or attacking or defensive. And then we will click all these boxes, and these boxes are dictating how we play the game. So for example, we might decide that we want to work the ball into the box, whereas Liverpool, for example, seem to have shoot on sight ticked on because they take an awful lot of shots from outside the box, and they also seem to be more expressive. And that would explain why Liverpool are shooting at will. So the AI is basically doing what you do for each of the teams. And so when we set up, it's really important to understand how the AI has actually instructed the team to play the game. Early in the season, then it's possible the team is not familiar with the tactical approach, so you might have a better chance of breaking them down. As the season gets older, however, these games are possibly going to become a little bit more difficult. And so we need to use the data hub and the chalkboard to understand how the opposition play, where they are strong, where they are weak, and where we can find space in order to score the goals that we need to win the game. Sometimes this is obvious, and sometimes it's not so obvious and requires a little bit more work and a little bit more attention to detail. And in this case against Tottenham, it was not obvious at all how we were supposed to defend against them and how we were going to attack. It was not obvious where their weaknesses were, and it's going to take some research in order to find where they are. So I think that the AI sets up exactly in the same way as you do. Better managers have been given the ability to have maybe 2 or 3 different ways to play. And sometimes you will see your assistant tell you it looks like they are trying to whip crosses into the box. It looks like they are playing with a bit more caution. So your assistant will advise you when they have switched a little bit in terms of their tactical approach. And you will also see it a lot more clearly when they actually change formation. Poorer managers at the bottom of the list of the total database of managers, will have one tactic, one way of playing, and they will play that all the time. But better managers, as is the manager for Tottenham, who is Postecoglou, may have 1 or 2 little tricks up his sleeve. And so that's my belief on how the AI is set up. And now we need to go and have a look at how Tottenham play and how can I get the best possible result out of this game. Given that Tottenham are a much better team than we are, it's going to be tough. So let's take a look at what we can find out. And so the idea of what I'm going to do for each and every game is try to find out how the team we are playing like to play, and then how can I force them to play in a way that they don't like to play. And I've been saying this in my live streams for years. It's about trying to get the opposition to play in a way that they are not comfortable with. For example, if a team likes to spray the ball out to the wings and then get crosses in behind your fullbacks, it's not a very good idea to funnel them outside. It might be better to funnel them inside. For example, if a team likes to press high up the pitch and wins the ball back a lot high up the pitch, it's probably not a good idea to play out of defence. It might be a better idea to play balls behind them and make their wing backs and central defenders turn and chase the ball. We have to make them play in a way that they're not comfortable in playing. And that is the secret to success in each of your games. So we're going to divide it into 2 things, how they defend and how they attack. And basically we're going to use a number of tools in order to find that out. So the first stop that we can make is to go to the Premier League stats and to have a look at the team detailed stats. And my first protocol is, of course, the amount of possession that they get. And Tottenham, as you can see, are very good at retaining possession. And that suggests to me that they like to play in a controlled possession style, possibly even in a tiki-taka style. We'll find that out later, but they do retain a lot of possession. And they are able, obviously, to pass the ball around. But then I'm going to go and have a look at their defensive ability. And I'm going to want to find out how good they are at winning the ball back. I suspect Tottenham are going to press high, and I want to see how good they are at winning the ball back. And then I'm going to try and find out later where they actually win that ball back. And so if we go to possession 1, we can see that they're not that great in terms of winning back possession, that they are only in 12th in terms of the league table possession 1. How they win the ball back will be mainly due to tackles, so I want to have a look at the tackles-1 ratio. They do win a good amount of tackles. 79% of the tackles attempted are won. So it's really important in terms of how they defend that I work out where they are winning back possession, and that might give me an idea of where I can attack them. I'm also interested in the number of shots they have against them, and they do concede an awful lot of shots against. 46 shots in 7 games they concede. This is a high number, and so it is possible, and teams have been breaking them down. That's a very high number of shots against. On the other hand, that you can see that we have an even higher number of shots against, and so we're probably going to have to be defensively good against Tottenham. Now, if we go to the attacking statistics, again, I'm going to be interested in the number of shots that they have for themselves. And so if we click on shots for, you can see that they do have a great deal of shots, 104 in their 7 games. We also have a number of shots on goal, and 83 in 7 games, but obviously not as much as Tottenham. And it's starting to look like we are not as good a team as Tottenham. I also am interested in goals from crosses. We are second, 2 goals from crosses. Tottenham are in joint 4th. It's early in the season. They have just 1 goal from crosses. And so even running through this data, I'm starting to get a picture of how Tottenham are going to play against us. If we look at the number of passes completed, you can see that Tottenham are sitting in 10th. We are sitting in 13th. But there's a difference of around about 500 passes over the 7 or 8 games that we've played. It's a lot of difference. They are probably a better passing team than we are. And so just going in here has given me an idea of how they are going to play. In terms of the player overview, I can get another idea of possibly who the most dangerous players are for them. So if I go to the player detail, now I want to have a look at goals scored. And we are 3rd in the table. Ollie Watkins has scored 5 goals in 7 appearances. And we can see that Son is clearly the most dangerous player for Tottenham in terms of the amount of goals scored. Bissouma is not far behind him. He has 3 from his 7 appearances. So we do need to keep an eye on Son and Bissouma. We can also take a look in detail at the player assists. Philogene for Aston Villa has 2, Maatsen has 2, and Pau Torres has 2 for Aston Villa. And looking for Tottenham, we can see we have to go down a bit for Tottenham, and Tottenham actually in terms of assisting don't even figure in the list. Actually, we can see that Bentancur has a lot of assists. He has 4 assists in his 7 appearances. So in terms of the team, I'm starting to build up who the most dangerous players are and who I need to keep an eye on. Bentancur, Son and Bissouma seem to be the key players I need to watch in that team. And I would suggest that you do the preparation early in the week. And that's because if you are going to change the tactic from what you used last time, you might want to go in and just change it to the current way that you're planning to play for the next game. And that way your assistant can make changes if he needs to do that. I let my assistant manage the training, but if you are managing it yourself, you may want to change some of these things within the overall training style. And so early in the week, you're not going to have access to any information about them in the data hub. But you do have a lot of information at your disposal. And you can look at Tottenham's schedule and you can have a look at how they've been playing in their last game or in the last few games. And the more difficult the game, it may be that you might want to have a look at how they've been playing in their last few games. I'm not really interested in how they played in the Europa League or the EFL Cup third round. They probably played with a different team and in a different style to what they would normally play in the Premier League. I'm interested in their Premier League games, and in particular, I'm interested in the Ipswich game, because Ipswich, who are flying high, as we mentioned before, managed to get a 1-1 draw against them. So it's very prudent to go and take a look at that game. And we can pretty much see that Tottenham dominated the game, 54% of the possession, and they had 14 shots to Ipswich 5, only 4 on target though. They were very fortunate, despite dominating the game, to come out with a point in that game. So we have to try and figure out why it all went wrong for them and what Ipswich did in order to get that point against them and almost beat them. So we can go and have a look at the analytical data. And the first stop will be to go to the team data. And straight away, I'm going to go and study their pass combinations. I know from what I've seen previously from the Premier League stats, they are a good passing team. And I'm interested in the passes that they've completed. And at this stage, there's not much you can do with this. It looks like a bit of a mess. But I can break this down, and you can see all these little boxes that you can tick. We'll have a look first of all at the complete story, but I'm interested in the forward passes, and still it's looking a bit messy. I can't really see anything out of that, and so I can break it down though, and I can look at their short passes, for example, and you can see that there are a number of short passes pretty much all over the pitch, and this is what I was seeing in the Newcastle game. If I click that off and go to medium length passes, there are much fewer medium length passes. There's a few down the middle, and but most of them are scattered in the wide areas. And now I click that off and go to long passes. They don't play many long passes at all, but if they do play long passes, then it is out to this right hand side. I can also break it down in terms of the pitch, and if I click that off and go to all passes again, and now I can look at the defensive half of the pitch and have a look at the passes that they play when they're coming out of defense. So I'm going to look at first their short passes, and the number of short passes is generally coming from outside of their penalty area. There's not many passes short coming from inside the penalty area. Having a look at the medium passes, and we're starting to see that the goalkeeper is playing much more medium passes. And there are about as much as the same in terms of the medium and short passes. Long passes from the back, there are none at all. That pretty much tells me that they are going to play out from defence. And so now if I turn to their attacking passes and turn off the defensive passes, now I can get a better idea of where the passes are going when they're attacking. And if I again look at the length and I go for short passes, I can see that there are a lot of short passes that go down the flanks. There are passes that go up through the middle, but mostly you can see that these passes are looking for the wide players. If I then click on medium passes, you can see again they're kind of looking for the wide players, but also some passes are played in the channels into these little areas, probably little deft through balls that they are attempting. Long passes, again, few and far between for their attacking play, and they're mainly directed out to the right-hand side. And finally, if I look at the right-hand side of the field, look at long passes, I've seen those before. I can see medium passes going out to the wide players, and I can see a lot of short passes going out to the wide players. So it does look to me like they are playing down the flanks. And if I go to the left, again, I can see it's mostly short or medium passes being played out to the flanks. There are a lot of passes that they are directing towards the flanks. Down the middle when they're attacking, not so much, but they do tend to try to get to the midfielders playing down the middle. So I pretty much can see from what I'm seeing on that screen that there is an emphasis on finding the wide players. And I can also see from this screen that there is a lot of play going on in the wide areas of the pitch, but also they're not afraid to play it through the middle, and a lot of passes are going on in midfield. This is going to be a very, very difficult team to play against. If I look at the combinations for all of them, I just clear the screen for now, look at the pass combinations. It tells me that a lot of pass combinations happen down the left-hand side of the field, and a lot of passes are going up the right-hand side of the pitch. There is also a double pivot in midfield which they're using, and Bentancur and Bissouma are going to be players that we're going to have to stop playing in the middle of the field. If we can stop them playing, then we have a chance of winning the game. One of the reasons why I picked to play in the 4-3-3 is so that I can stop them playing in the midfield. Also have to be very careful about their two central defenders, because they seem to be at the heart of everything, and if we can stop them distributing the ball, then we do have a chance of winning this game. Knowing that they focus their play a lot down the flanks, what I want to try and do is get them to play in the middle. We can overload the middle of the pitch, force them to play into the middle, and then hopefully win possession in the middle and launch attacks from there. I'll just click clear events, and as they seem to play a lot in the wide areas, I'm very interested in the number of crosses. Only 6 crosses were completed successfully, and they were completed from the right-hand side of the pitch in the main. So that is a very dangerous area that I need to keep an eye on. In terms of the unsuccessful crosses, pretty much from both sides of the pitch. So I'm pretty sure that in terms of crossing the ball, it's the right-hand side that I really need to be defensively solid and stop that from happening. A very interesting thing to look at is the tackles that they have won and where they have won their tackles. And as you can see, they win a lot of their tackles on the right-hand side and on the left-hand side of the field. Very few tackles were won in the middle of the pitch. If you look at the tackles lost, there's a few more in the middle of the pitch, and again, the left-hand side, more tackles were lost than the right-hand side. It does seem to me that Tottenham's strength is on the right-hand side, and I'm starting to get a picture of how Tottenham are playing. Whilst they'll look for players, wide players on both sides of the pitch, they do seem to be stronger on the right, both in terms of attack and defence. And if I finally go and have a look at, if I clear events, go and have a look at their heat map, then what I'm going to see is that they are obviously focused a little bit more down the right-hand flank than they are down the left. But a lot of their play is going through the middle, through Bissouma and Bentancur. So we need to be careful about two things. And we need to stop the central defenders linking up with players on the right and left-hand side. And we need to flood the midfield and make sure that they're not creating from those spaces. I think if we're able to do that, then we have a chance of winning this game. And in a big game, I'd go back and look at maybe 1 or maybe 2 of the Premier League games that they've played just recently, because what I'm interested to know is the pattern pretty much the same? And I went back through the Wolves game and the Liverpool game, and the pattern that I was seeing was pretty much the same for each of those games. So I think I know how Tottenham are going to play now. When the data hub finally comes out, that will give me some valuable information. The first thing that it will give me, if I go to the analyst report and I look at the formation analysis, I'll be able to see in terms of the way that we play, for example, a 5-2-2-1, which is near enough to our 5 at the back tactic. They produce a plus 14 in terms of clear-cut chances for and against. If I look at the 4-2-3-1, they produce a plus 6, and the 4-3-3 is a minus 2. And that really tells me that I should be playing in the 4-3-3, and that will give us the best chance of beating Tottenham. And then I'm going to quickly go to the comparison, and the comparison will tell me how good or how bad we are in comparison to Tottenham. And in defence, you can clearly see Tottenham are better, much better in terms of the ability in midfield, except for long shots, where they're not very good at long shots. In attack, they are clearly better than us in a lot of areas, but we've got them beaten in the air. And then physically they are better than us mentally, and it's roughly about the same in terms of the technical ability of both teams. So they are a better team than us. And now the final thing that I can look at is to go to the next opposition performance. And there's a lot of data here, but I'm really concerned in here about their pressing intensity. And I can see from Tottenham that there is a low number of opposition passes for each defensive action and a high defensive line. So they're playing with a very high defensive line. And they prevent teams from putting a lot of passes together, something that we have to bear in mind. And in terms of where they gain the ball back, I can see that a lot of the ball is gained back around about the halfway line, but there are a lot of defensive actions around their penalty area. This is quite surprising to me. I would have expected not to see 23% of defensive actions in the penalty area. This might be due to set pieces, or possibly counter-attacks which teams are launching because they are so high up the pitch. Their passes attempted, you can see plainly that most of them are from around about the halfway line, and very few, as we saw in the data hub, very few passes are done in their defensive area. It does seem to me that they're going to play very high. They're going to attempt to win the ball back high up the pitch, and they are going to just put pressure on us. It does not make sense to try and play the ball out from the back unless you have a very, very good passing defensive line and a good pivot in midfield with high passing ability. It doesn't make sense. So what we should be doing in terms of Tottenham, having looked at all that, I decided to play in the 4-3-3. I wanted to flood the midfield. I wanted to try and keep the ball away from their flanks. And so what I decided to do, that the best way possibly to play against Tottenham was to play with a more direct passing style. I wanted to, just when we turned the ball over, try to make them turn. We were going to play slightly more direct with a higher tempo to try and unsettle them, get the ball up the pitch as fast as we could, pass into space for our forwards to run into. I felt that chances would be few and far between, so I gave them no instructions here, but I wanted them that if they had a chance, go for it. And to play for set pieces, because I fancied that a lot of their defensive actions were from set pieces, to dribble less so that they would clear the ball more often, and to be more disciplined about how I wanted them to play. I wanted to regroup when we lost possession. I thought it was very important that we were in shape, but we were going to counter-attack, distribute it quickly. I was going to let the goalkeeper decide where best to actually distribute the ball. And then out of possession, I was going to sit in a low block. They're a very, very dangerous team. I felt our best plan was to sit back, soak up the pressure, bring them out as high as we could, and then with these long balls try and turn them and try and get panic in their defence. And that was the plan. We were going to step up more with a standard line, try to stop the crosses where possible. And that was the plan to play against Tottenham. We were huge underdogs in this game, and it made sense to me to sit back and try and get them on the counter-attack. We knew also that they win the ball a lot in the wide areas. And Ramsey, then I decided it might be better for him to be running inside. Buendia, I decided to keep as a winger. He's a good player, and they didn't win the ball back so often on the left-hand side of the field. So what we were already doing seemed to fit what we had set up. I also was aware that they were much stronger in terms of their crossing ability on the right-hand side. So I decided to play Mings with good defensive ability as an inverted fullback on that side and attack more down our right-hand side. That was the game plan. Now let's go and see what happened. And so it had finished as a 0-0 draw, and it was a pretty dire affair. I watched the whole 90 minutes. Both teams struggled, and I think it was just a case of these two very good teams at the moment in very good form just cancelling each other out. Certainly my plan to cancel out Tottenham worked, but we didn't create enough chances. We didn't have enough shots on goal. But I, away at Tottenham, was very happy to get that draw. It leaves us still top of the league. We pretty much cancelled out Tottenham's effect in the middle. We stopped them playing on the flanks. And Tottenham, although they had 14 shots on goal, they only got 3 on target, and the lower line was forcing them to take shots from distance. They were caught offside quite a lot, and it was really quite a dire affair, with both teams really struggling to unlock the defences. We totally gave up possession by playing in the way that we did, but at the end of the day, possession doesn't win football matches. We could, if luck had been with us, have won it at the end. That corner that you saw at the end was just one of a series of corner that we had, and one of them was cleared off the line. So it was a very, very close affair. I'm happy with a point, and that might look like we are in a poor run of form, but you have to look at the fixtures and the teams that we've played against. We've played Liverpool, Paris Saint-Germain and Tottenham, and those were very tough games. So to come away with 2 draws and a very narrow defeat, I don't think we are in a poor run of form. We are still top of the league, and we hopefully can remain there for a little bit to come. I think fixtures will get a little bit easier now from here on in, although Ipswich are going to be a difficult opponent, as they've already beaten Liverpool and drawn with Tottenham. So we're not going to be able to just walk over Ipswich. It's going to take a lot of work to figure out how to beat Ipswich when better teams than us have not been able to figure that out. And so that's it for this video, and I hope you found it informative. And just to remind everybody just to do all that stuff that you can see on the screen, because it does help me out a lot. It does motivate me to make videos a lot, and it does help the channel to grow. And we'll be back with the next game that we are going to play, which is that big game against high-flying Ipswich. And all that remains to be said now is stay safe, take care, and we'll see you in the next one.